Hello students, I am Shreelata, Department of English, STM Degree College, Honavar. In my previous class, we have seen the first generation poets of Romantic period, and today I am dealing with the second generation poets of Romantic age or Romantic period. The second generation poets are also called the younger generation poets, and we have three major writers here. They are P.B. Shelley, John Keats and Lord Byron. Let me begin with the first writer. The first writer is P.B. Shelley. P.B. Shelley was a visionary poet, or even we can say he was a rebel or an angry poet, because when he was a student at Oxford University, he was expelled from the university for having published the pamphlet, that is The Necessity of Atheism. And this is just one example to show his anger or revolting nature. And even we can see a kind of reformative zeal in the works of P.B. Shelley. And P.B. Shelley is remembered for the description of nature and use of rhythm or music or sweet music in his poems, and revolting nature or reformation, or his aim is at the well-being of the society. So these are the few or the major features of the writings of P.B. Shelley. So now let us consider the important works written by P.B. Shelley. The first one is Queen Mab, and it is the early work or his early effort, and it presents his love for liberty, or the poem or this work presents his love for liberty and even a kind of revolting nature is presented, or revolting note or love for liberty can be seen in the poem, that is Queen Mab. And another important work, and it is the famous work written by P.B. Shelley, that is Alastor, or the Spirit of Solitude. So this is a very important and famous work written by P.B. Shelley, and even we can say it is a kind of spiritual autobiography. It is a kind of spiritual autobiography of P.B. Shelley, that is Alastor, or the Spirit of Solitude. Because this poem presents travel of a man, and we can say that it is P.B. Shelley himself, or the poem presents the writer's mood and how the traveler is trying to search a kind of ideal beauty or a kind of satisfaction in the world of dream. And it presents how the traveler, or P.B. Shelley himself, and how he wants to go away from the society, and how he is happy and satisfied in his own world of dream. And this is about the poem or the poetical work, that is Alastor, the Spirit of Solitude. And in this poem, we can see the beautiful description of different places, because the traveler or the speaker of this poem, or he travels or he visits various places, and even the reference of Kashmir also can be seen in this poem, that is Alastor, the Spirit of Solitude. And one more work written by P.B. Shelley is Epipsychidion. Epipsychidion is a love poem. It is a love poem written by P.B. Shelley, and this is written, or this is dedicated to his beloved, or we can say the third beloved, and she is Emilia. And this poem presents his dream, in which the poet escapes to a beautiful spot of nature with his beloved, that is Emilia. And this is a love poem written by P.B. Shelley, that is Epipsychidion. And one more very important work written by P.B. Shelley is Idleness. And it is an elegy, a famous elegy written on the death of his friend or another important or great writer of romantic age, that is John Keats, who died at the age of 26. This work or this elegy, that is Idleness, written by P.B. Shelley, and it is written in 3 parts. In the first part, the writer presents the mourners, in the sense the people who are expressing their pain or sorrow. And in the second part, the writer or P.B. Shelley is attacking the critics who were harsh towards the works of John Keats. And in the last or in the concluding part of this elegy, P.B. Shelley gives a kind of philosophical touch to this poem or to this elegy by presenting or by saying that though Keats is not there, or his soul is immortal. So this is how we can see or we can analyze the famous elegy written by P.B. Shelley, that is Idleness, on the death of John Keats. And these are very important or famous poems, and one more is there, and that is the revolt of Islam. As I already mentioned, we can see a kind of reformative zeal in this poem. And besides these works, we have the shorter lyrics of this writer, like The Cloud to a Skylark, Ode to the West Wind, Music, When Soft Voices Die. So these are some other important works written by P.B. Shelley. So this is about the first writer, P.B. Shelley, who was a rebel, and he had a kind of reformative zeal and revolutionary, and even he was expelled from the university, and his important works like Alastair, Queen Mab, and famous elegy Idleness, Epipsychidion, The Revolt of Islam, and other or lyrical poems. And now moving to the second writer. The second writer is John Keats. John Keats is a very famous poet of romantic age, but unfortunately he died at the age of 26. He died of tuberculosis. And this writer or the poet John Keats, if we look at the life of this writer, he lost his parents, and his brother was also suffering from the same disease, that is tuberculosis. And this writer John Keats, he used to take care of his brother. When he was just 15, John Keats was apprenticed to a surgeon, but he found his career in poetry because he was born to be a poet. Poetry was his passion, and throughout the poems, or if we analyze the works written by John Keats, his main concern is beauty. Beauty is the major concept or the theme of his poems. And we can see the beautiful description of nature in almost all the poems written by John Keats. And let us consider the poems written by John Keats. The first one is Endymion. Endymion is a great work. It is a love poem written by John Keats, and even we can see a kind of Hellenic subject of beauty in this poem, which says that John Keats was a great lover of Greek myth, and even he has taken the subject or the story from Greek mythology. And this is a love story of a shepherd who falls in love with moon goddess Cynthia. And this poem, that is Endymion, begins with a famous line, that is, "A thing of beauty is joy forever." A thing of beauty is joy forever. This is a famous quote given by John Keats in this poem, that is Endymion. And this poem presents John Keats' love for beauty. And even he says that, or he presents that beauty has the ability to remove the pain or sorrows of human beings, or it has a kind of healing power. And this is how we can analyze the poem Endymion, which has the theme of love and even beauty. And one more work written by John Keats, that is Hyperia. So actually John Keats started writing this work in 1818, but he stopped in 1819. Actually he wanted to write, or it was modeled on Paradise Lost by John Milton, but he did not complete the work. Though it is a fragment, it is sublime, or it is a great work written by John Keats. And one more work of John Keats, that is The Eve of Saint Agnes. And it is one of the finest lyrical or narrative poems written by John Keats. And it tells the story of two lovers. It is a story of elopement of two lovers, beautifully narrated in the form of a poem by John Keats. One more very famous and tragic poem written by John Keats is Isabella. Isabella is a tragic poem written by John Keats. Isabella, the Pot of Basil. And in this poem, John Keats takes the subject, or he takes the story from a tale of Boccaccio. This poem deals with the tragic love story of an innocent girl, and her name is Isabella. Isabella's lover is murdered by her wicked brothers. And this girl, she comes to know about the death or about the murder of her lover by her wicked brothers in her dream. And she goes to the place, and even she sees the dead body of her lover, and she takes the head of the lover and she comes back, and she hides this in a pot of basil. So the title is both Isabella, like the pot of basil. And she hides it, but unfortunately her brothers discover this. And the poem ends with a tragic note. So this is a tragic poem written by John Keats, that is Isabella, the Pot of Basil. And one more, a very famous lyrical poem written by John Keats, that is La Belle Dame Sans Merci. It is one of the most read poems of John Keats. And besides these, we have other poems too, and he has written a famous sonnet that is on first looking into Chapman's Homer. This is a sonnet written by John Keats on first looking into Chapman's Homer. And he has written one more poem called Lamia. Lamia is a story, or it is a poem written by John Keats which presents the story of a serpent woman. And besides these, we have some other poems too, or specially odes he has written, John Keats. Odes, Ode to Nightingale, and Melancholy, and very famous ode written by John Keats is Ode to Autumn, and one more, Ode on a Grecian Urn. These are the famous odes written by John Keats. So this is about the poetical works written by John Keats. One more writer of Romantic Age, or the second generation poet, and he is Lord Byron. Lord Byron is another important romantic poet. George Gordon Byron is a name of this writer, but he is famously known as Lord Byron. He was a lover of travel, and he traveled across the continent, and he has presented his experiences in many of his works. So let us consider, or let us analyze the works written by Lord Byron. And if we look at the style of this writer, and if we compare, Lord Byron is different from other romantic poets because Lord Byron was an admirer of Pope. So though he belonged to Romantic Age, he had not freed completely from the influence of Neoclassical Age. So we can see a kind of influence of Alexander Pope because he has written satires. His works have satirical tone. The first work written by Lord Byron is Hours of Idleness. Hours of Idleness. When he wrote this work, the work was attacked by the critics. And when he received this harsh criticism, and he wrote one more work satirically, and that is The English Bards and Scotch Reviewers. In this work, he attacks the great poets who had attacked Lord Byron about his first work, that is Hours of Idleness. But when he himself reads, or when he read his work after a few years, and he felt ashamed of himself and for attacking the great poets of the age. And after this incident, he traveled across the continent, or he visited different countries of Europe, and he presented the same in his works. And very good example is Childe Harold's Pilgrimage. Childe Harold's Pilgrimage. Here, the hero of the work, he travels to different places, and that is Byron himself. And he has given the picture of different countries, or the social, political, or economical condition of different countries. Or we can say he has presented his experience of travel in this work, and that too satirically. It is a satire. And one more work written by this writer is The Vision of Judgment. It is also one of the finest political satires written by Lord Byron. And one more satire written by Lord Byron is Donwan. Here also the writer has presented the satirical view of the social and economical or the manners or the lifestyle of different countries. So apart from this, he has written few other poems too, but these are the major works written by Lord Byron. So if we analyze the works of P.B. Shelley, John Keats and even Lord Byron, we can see the use of, or we can see the presentation of the features of romantic age, so which we have already discussed, like passion for nature and subjectivity and even supernatural element and imagination. So if we go back to P.B. Shelley, look at the work Luster, the Spirit of Solitude, where he talks about his dream, and this is a very good example of imagination or use of imagination, and even the beautiful description of nature can be seen in the works of P.B. Shelley, like the same that I mentioned, Luster, the Spirit of Solitude, and even subjective nature can be seen because P.B. Shelley in his work, that is Epipsychidion, he has written about his own love story, or he has dedicated or he has written the work for his third beloved. Subjective, personal attitude can be seen. And John Keats. In the works of John Keats also we can see the description of nature and even subjective or personal experiences, and even very important thing is imagination. And last writer, Lord Byron. If we consider the works of Lord Byron, almost all the works are autobiographical or subjective or personal in nature. So with the help of this, we can say that again, nature or supernatural element or imagination and even simplicity are the features of romantic age. And even we can see in the poems of these writers, Shelley, Keats and Lord Byron. So this is about the poets and the works of second generation poets. They are P.B. Shelley, John Keats and Lord Byron.